So hello everybody and welcome to the Seed Funds panel at the RESI conference. We were supposed to obviously and excited to see you in person in Paris next week. Well, due to the current circumstances that doesn't work, and it's going to be a good test if that works digitally. We try our best. I think we have put together, I should say Claire has put together a good panel. Let me just introduce you to the different members. We have here Alexandra Bause from Apollo Ventures, Paolo Pio from Joyance Partners, Catherine Bull, or Boulet, you have to correct me, Catherine, from CapCCC, and Patrick Burgermeister from Sisu Technology Ventures. My name is Markus Wanko. I'm the founder of ISDQ, which is a small seed fund based in Vienna, Austria, and I'm happy to take you through that panel. Maybe the way we start is actually by an introduction of who we are and what our funds and institutions are doing, and how that could be interesting for people seeking funding. And maybe it's easiest, maybe not the most politest way, but the easiest way, just technically right now, if I start introducing myself and what ISDQ is. So ISDQ is a seed fund that was started by two institutions, IST Austria, which is a fairly new research institution here in Vienna, and Lansdowne Partners, which is a large hedge fund based out of London. And essentially, the idea was to start a very early pre-seed seed fund-oriented vehicle, not only for spin-offs from the Institute of Science and Technology, but really for the broader Austrian realm. Maybe just two sentences about the Institute, because not everybody might know this. The Institute was founded just 10 years ago. It's a very broad institute in basic science, really across all natural and formal sciences. So we have neuroscience, biology, physics, chemistry, math, computer science. And that also leads to the very broad realm of the fund. So we are really open to all these different disciplines. They're using our and can utilize our faculty and our scientific and research infrastructure for potential spin-offs. And really what we are doing is the very early end of things, right? So this is really pre-seed investment. We start with a couple of €100,000 and facilitate the founding process, the licensing process from the universities, and then are capable to follow maybe for 2 more rounds, depending on the sizing of this, with the ability to put something between 2.5 and €3 million maybe in each individual company. Yeah, we are, as I said before, we are fairly new. We started operations in 2018. We've raised the funds. We are hoping to have a final closing, well, during the first half of this year, ideally. So let's see how that plays out now. But so far we feel in relatively good shape, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more and say something about our portfolio and investments later. But I'd like to hand over now to the next person on the panel, maybe Alexandra. Would you take over the bat?
Sure. Thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Claire, for having me on the Seed Funds panel. I'm with Apollo Health Ventures. Our fund is both an investment fund, but also we consider ourselves a company builder. So we are starting a lot of ventures from scratch, and we come in very early. So similar to what Marcus said, we do a lot of pre-seed funding of academic projects, where we also put in around a couple of hundred thousand, and then follow on later in the seed or Series A funding rounds, where we also help bring on board other investors. What is very particular about Apollo Health Ventures is that our focus is really on therapeutics that target the aging process. So our mission in the long term is really to extend our healthy lifespans. And so all of our deals that we're basically either creating, or ventures that we're creating, or deals that we're investing in, are focused on this aging process and have the potential to really have an impact on extending this healthy lifespan. I guess overall, I don't know if I mentioned that, but overall we're deploying around 10 million per company, but then we do that usually in syndicates in a seed or Series A.
Excellent. Thanks, Alexandra. Paolo, would you be happy to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marcus. And thank you, Claire, for organizing this and inviting me. My name is Paolo Pio, and I am the Managing Director for Europe at Joyance Partners. Joyance Partners is a venture capital firm. It's an American firm with roughly 70 million asset under management, 20 people globally between full-time and part-time. In Europe, we launched last year. I was the first person to come on board, and now it's a team of 7 people. 3 are in London, and 4 people are spread out across the 4 major European capital for tech entrepreneurship. We invest in companies that are very early. We love a moment of inception, seed and pre-seed startups. We come in with small checks, 50K to 250K euros. And we do a very high volume of investments. We roughly, last year, we invested in 11 companies across Europe from April when we started until end of the year. And this year in 2020, we would like to invest in roughly 20 companies. So despite the virus, we're open for business and yeah, looking for great talent in startups. We focus on health and happiness startups. We also call them delightful moments. So companies that can make their users healthier or happier or both. And basically from this high level thesis, we go down into a number of different areas. The biggest bucket is life sciences. Within life sciences, we invest in companies in the field of fertility, longevity, gut microbiome, biotech, neurotech, neuroscience, sex tech for women, sexual wellness, and these are areas where we have investments already and where we're looking for new ones. I forgot to say that globally, we actually have a portfolio of roughly 300 companies. The fund started in 2010, so a very, very large portfolio. And then outside life sciences, we look at next generation food. We make investments in alternative protein, lab-grown meat, or plant-based meat. We look at robotics, and we look at less deep science for part of our portfolio, more consumer-based, like digital brands, direct to consumers, cosmetic, fragrances. My background is engineering, and then I did finance. I lived in San Francisco, then in Switzerland, and now in the UK. I'm Italian by background, as my accent easily gives away. So yeah, thank you for having me, and excited to be part of this panel.
Perfect. Thanks, Paolo. Thanks very much. And spreading happiness is probably as topical as all the other things that we are talking about currently. Catherine, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this panel. So I'm Catherine Boule. So I'm in Paris now, and I'm the managing partner of a French venture firm called Cap Decisive Management. Very difficult to say when you're English spoken. So we are planning to change the name soon. And we historically we invested in seed stage, mainly in Paris area. For now nearly 20 years. And we just launched a new fund dedicated to digital health projects, investing in seed and Series A companies, mainly French one, but also we can do some deals in Western Europe. So it's pretty new for us. And this fund is particular for us because it's a new space. Digital health, it's very bullish for now, but there's a lot of different things inside, from the well-being and perhaps happy, I don't know, happy therapy, to very med tech and deep tech technologies with of course, AI, radiology imagery, some algorithm to better diagnose or prognose pathologies, etc. So we are on all these different segments, and we decided to convince some corporates to join us on these new ventures, and we've got some guys like Philips or some private clinics into our round table. We can invest from €500,000 to €5 million into the company. Of course, we prefer to syndicate these deals because times are difficult, and there will be more, fortunately for us. So that's it.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Thanks very much. And we have one more person on the panel. Last not least, Patrick Burgermeister from KISO. Patrick.
Yes, good morning also from my side. And thank you for inviting me on this panel. I represent KISO Technology, which is based in southern Germany, in Karlsruhe. My personal background is in molecular biology and Alzheimer's disease, and I worked in different industries, amongst them banking, but also a big pharma at Novartis. And my largest background is actually in venture capital, where I worked since 2006. I was one of the partners at Biomed Invest, a Swiss venture capital group that had about 350 million under management. And last year, I joined KISO, which is a family office, mostly owned by Michael Greve, a German internet pioneer. And we do a little bit like Apollo, represented by Alex here on the phone, in early stage rejuvenative biotechnology. So we want to prolong healthy lifespans. A term that we often use is category openers. We're especially interested in completely new categories that have not been invested in before. A good example would be senolytics, that are already up and running, already in the clinic. Our approach is evergreen, so we do not have a closed-end fund. Our investment geography is globally. No matter where the technology evolves, we like to be there. If you look at our homepage, kiso.com, most of the investments in the past have been in the US, which is probably natural given the early adopter mentality of the Northern Americans. But we'd like to do much more in Europe in the future. The background of Michael and his team is mostly in IT. He's been the founder of web.de and other internet startups. So the group is very familiar with breakthrough developments. And we share the conviction that also in life sciences, we will no longer see that many incremental innovations, a little bit improved cancer treatments where you live 3 months longer but die anyway, but really a paradigm shift. The tickets we issue initially are mostly between 1 and 2 million. It can be less, it can be more. We're quite flexible there. And most of the investments we do and have done are in drug development, but we're not really excluding anything else in life science. It could also be medtech and diagnostics. Just hasn't happened in the past. Maybe to give an example of what we're not after is, for example, the typical conventional approach of a single target, a single drug. We just think that the low-hanging fruit in this area have been taken. If you look at cancer, where you have a system of 23,000 genes, to expect a cure in such diseases with a single drug that attacks one special mechanism, then yeah, I think it's very difficult to have a breakthrough there. That's it from my side.
Thanks, Patrick. Thank you. It's fascinating, actually. I think this is really a great panel in terms of breadth and diversity. I think we have representatives sort of really across the spectrum of more breakthrough, deep tech oriented to consumer oriented, different sizes of funds, different geographic origin in Europe, sort of US based, some not, and quite a variety of different investment models. And maybe it's good, because that will be interesting, I think, for the audience to pick up on the last one a little bit. We have evergreen family offices, we have venture builders, we have more classic venture funds. So maybe we can do a turn again and talk about our different investment models. And maybe I can start. ISTQ is basically set up as a classic venture capital fund with a slightly longer duration, so we can hold on to our investments a little bit longer. The way we start, I mentioned it initially, is really with pre-seed tickets in the 200, 300,000 euro category, which we can syndicate. We don't have to syndicate. The valuations that we typically look at that stage in Austria are somewhere around 1.5 and 2 million, roughly. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, but that's kind of the majority of propositions that we see. And what we really try to do is to, for the next 2 rounds, so for a seed and a Series A round, to reinvest and roughly keep our stake at that sort of 10 to 12% roughly, which so far has worked, and that's really the model we are trying to implement. Obviously, at a Series A and then certainly to a Series B, we need to bring in others as well. We have a quite good network with established bigger players. And in all the investments we have done so far, we have also brought in co-investors who then can also take over a lead in a Series B setting. Yeah, so that's roughly the model that we are trying to implement. And who wants to chime in next?
Sure, I can go next. So we have a model that is probably 50% venture creation, where we actually come up with our own hypotheses of new innovations that we would like to develop further, and then connect with academics that are working on those areas to co-found companies with that focus. And then the other 50% are traditional external deal flow, where we get pitches or we actually connect with existing companies that are working in that space. And so for the venture creation, as I mentioned, we put in a pre-seed ticket that is around, like, say, median would be like a 500K up to 1 million to de-risk that opportunity. And then that venture creation part actually goes in line with the other external investment, where we co-invest or form syndicates with other investors, or we also help the teams fundraise to bring in a seed round of around 1 to 5 million, but really depends on the need of the companies. And we also help shape the strategies and help shape prepare the budgets, bring in the right team. So we have someone in our team that is actually an HR expert who's mainly focusing on looking at talent that we need for specific companies and bring in that talent. And then we also have a network of investors, both in Europe, but also in the US. We have one office in Boston that I forgot to mention, where we're connecting a lot with US-based venture funds, also later stage venture funds to bring in the later rounds. And one example would be that we just recently closed a Series A investment for one of our portfolio companies over in the Bay Area that raised 35+ million Series A, where we basically partnered with 2 other big US biotech investors. And so that's kind of our model, where we support the companies in that way.
Excellent. And that was Alexandra from Apollo, right?
Yes, that's Alexandra from Apollo.
Just checking in that since we are all on audio here only.
Of course.
All right. Well, thanks, Alexandra. Who wants to come in next?
Happy to go next. This is Paolo from Joyance Partners. Our model is to basically, we're a thematic investor. So we each year we tear the fund down, the principles of our fund down, and then build it back up, deciding what are the areas where we need to focus our attention. In fact, we started back in 2010 as focusing on media and mobile, riding the trend that was all the rage back then. One of the investments we made there was actually Pinterest, right, which recently went public. So our tools, I didn't say before, we're very heavy on our own software tools that we use for deal sourcing. We roughly see 10,000 new companies per year. Which is a lot. If you do the math, this means that we see 200 new companies per week, right? That's the amount that hits our desk. It doesn't mean we speak with all of them. We roughly speak with 20% of them, though. So 40 new companies a week, that's the amount we manage. Just to bring it back, our tools basically were indicating a lot of strength and activity in the areas of health and happiness. And so around 2015 and 16, we basically redirected the focus of the fund towards that area. And then we started making investment. We started tasting the ground there first, and we started hiring people within the team with expertise in that sense. So now we have a medical doctor in the team. We have 3 PhDs in life sciences in order to be able to do our own scientific due diligence, right? And so that's where now the fund is fully focused with B2C model preferably. So individual health more than B2B. We sometimes do B2B, but not as often. And to go back to the original question, we're a thematic investor. So we roughly have now these 10 sectors where we look at, which I mentioned earlier, for life sciences, food, robotics, and consumer goods. Within these sectors, we invested in multiple companies, right? So we are hands off. We only take 1 to 2%, sometimes 5 max ownership within a startup. We don't take board seats. We don't take forms of control, right? And we believe that the entrepreneur is the best person to know how to run their own company. But we want to be helpful when the entrepreneur asks us to. So we leave it up to the entrepreneur to come and ask us for help. And this happens in a number of circumstances. Often we help them out, for example, with PR, getting linking up with tech journalists covering the industry. Often we help them out with their next raise. If we do our job right, the companies we invest in Europe will want to go either to the US or to Asia. We have very strong connections in both places, and entrepreneur and venture funds in both places. In fact, in the US, we co-invested with roughly 4,000 other investors, and we have a database that we can mine depending on specific parameters to make the most useful and targeted introductions. And then community, right? As mentioned, we only invest in health and happiness, and we care a lot about community, and the people within our community found a lot of value interacting from each other. There's a lot of synergies that come together, right? We had an event in London just at the end of January. Around 70 people came. Our 11 founders came from the different places in Europe, and it was great. And actually what happened is that, 2 companies we invested in, one is doing lab-grown fat, and the other one is doing plant-based chicken, met that night, started talking, and then left to have a beer and discuss how they could do a prototype of a hybrid product, which would be basically a chicken nugget built with the plant-based chicken together with lab-grown fat, right? So that's quite representative of the power of community, and really this is our ambition, matter of fact, to be perceived as the place to be, right, as the family, as the house for all the entrepreneurs that are operating in the field of health and happiness across Europe and the US. Yeah, this pretty much sums it up.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you. Catherine or Patrick, who wants to be next?
Yeah, I can jump in. So Cap Decisive is initially was a very local fund dedicated to invest into the Paris region companies. It was a government, a French state initiative, and we were more opportunistic than thematic investors. The last fund that we just launched into digital health space is the first one for us that is not generalist. So it was pretty natural for us to go in the digital health space because in fact in our team we got the two experience with the healthcare sector and digital, and most of the time majority of the deals that we made in the past was in one or another aspect of this sector. So naturally we jump in the digital health, which is at the crossover of the two of the both sectors, and we probably have the opportunity to see the projects very early stage. We invest in seed and Series A, but we can do occasionally some pre-seed round, and we look at the projects with the both views, the healthcare one and the digital one, because these projects in this space are very unusual, and business models, technologies, skills needed into the companies are most of the time a mix of these two sectors. So it's very interesting for us, and in fact very new. We can invest with others VCs or seed investors, of course, and we probably will do a mixed roundtable in this fund, because healthcare VCs are coming onto the healthcare digital health space, and also digital more traditional digital investors are coming in. So it's very interesting to see that cultures are not the same, in fact, in the way to see the project and to deal with the entrepreneurs. So it's very interesting, very new. Some very interesting discussions are coming, and of course we are, as Marcus just described, we are doing same, and with small tickets at the beginning, sometimes alone, rarely, but sometimes, and we put more money into the following round up to Series B, sometimes Series C, and do how we can to help the entrepreneurs and to grow the company and to have some strategic discussions, and also to help them to raise the following rounds. We are very active into the financing strategy and putting the people in context. That's the way we work.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. I think that's helpful to understand, obviously. And we have Patrick left.
Yes, Patrick from Kizu. I'd like to contrast what we do a little bit with what Paolo said. They're active in 10 areas, he said. So we have a much narrower focus. We're just one, that is investments in longevity, which of course is a special area. About 10 years ago or so, you couldn't even say that without being looked at a little bit awkwardly. But the science has strongly advanced in this field. So last year, Professor Sinclair from Harvard regenerated part of the central nervous system of a mammal. We have now epigenetic markers, clocks, to measure interventions in biological aging. So it's really getting hot now, this field. There are more companies, more funds starting, also in Europe recently, and we are quite active in that field. We co-invest mostly with angels due to the earliness of the investments, and also family offices. As mentioned by others in this group, we can syndicate but don't need to, in contrast to some VC funds who need like-minded other funds. We can also do it alone, sometimes also do. We help fundraising actively, open doors to other investors. And another active part is we also take board seats as long as we feel it is helpful for the company, because we like to have strong companies and also strong founders there. Yeah, that's about it from my side.
Thanks, Patrick. And obviously the longevity theme is one that, I mean, that obviously two in our group here are pushing, and that I'm sure allows for interesting and also fruitful discussions with LP investors, particularly high net worth individuals who will see this as an interesting personal topic as well, I guess. Mm-hmm. Actually, I mean, bridging on this topic to a much more serious note, clearly. So as this recording will air, probably another week will have passed since the recording now. We are now in a phase where I think everybody is clearly affected by hopefully not infected by the COVID situation. We have people on the panel in London, in Switzerland, in Munich, in Germany, here in Vienna. Clearly, there is a big impact in Austria. Just yesterday, the entire population has been asked to stay in, which obviously hasn't happened yet. So I think it would be appropriate and topical to talk a little bit about the impact that we see from this pandemic on the seed funding space. As far as I know, none of us are actually virologists or epidemiologists, so I don't think anybody would expect us to give specific insights or information on how to deal with COVID-19. But I think the impact that this will have on the seed funding sphere, both short-term and long-term, is maybe something interesting to touch upon. Is there anybody who wants to take a start at this?
Yeah, maybe I can say a few remarks. Patrick here from Kizu. I also do not feel qualified to give some insights into the medical aspects of it. But what I see, and I always try to see a positive side to most things, is that it certainly accelerates the digitalization and virtualization of the industry. So some aspects may be here to stay, like video pitching, fundraising, that doesn't need to be physically necessarily, less traveling, which may be helpful for the future. And a second thing that I hope for actually a little bit is that it could have long-term positive effects on the regulatory environment. Well, concretely, of course, speedier approvals of treatments that target diseases with high medical needs, as we have seen now for a diagnostic test that has been pushed through in the US, and I think it was 24 hours. Things that normally take weeks or months are now pushed through at the much higher speed. And I hope this will break up the encrusted regulatory environment a bit, because the larger players, of course, profit from the status quo, the slowness of all the processes, because they have a large capital basis, but the seed capitals that we all invest in don't have that, and so the market entry barriers are much higher for them, unnecessarily so sometimes.
It will certainly work for the immediate applications right now, right? And if there is some benefit to stay, I think that would be great, clearly. Are there any other views?
Yes, this is Paolo, and thank you, Marcus and Patrick. I absolutely agree with you, Patrick. You know, One comment is on a professional note, another one is on a personal note. I'll start with the personal. I'm Italian, I live in London. I was supposed to go home, well, this last weekend, and I tried everything I could to keep the tripod because it was my niece's birthday. And and that's the Italian mentality. Even if the government was telling us you guys shouldn't go out, and you know, we always try to find a way around. And only when things got ugly did our own people realize, all right, we actually must not do it. And you know, I now see my friends and my family being in lockdown. Everybody's home because they want to do it, right? So it was a real shift in mentality that I witnessed among the Italians, among my people, that we, by nature, we are inclined to do the opposite of what we're told. Number one. And so to Patrick's point, though, what we started doing is actually we started meeting virtually, right? So I'm doing the birthday via Zoom this week. We have a time set in the diary. My sister is organizing it. My nieces don't know. Both of them are born a few days apart. And so, yeah, it's a way to enjoy family, to stay together. And yes, I didn't say it at the beginning, I run a boot camp, a fitness boot camp in London, right? 11 a.m., we meet in Hyde Park. It's a free boot camp training. We get around 100 people. It's a lot, it's big. We've been doing it for the past 3 years, every Sunday, rain or shine, and rain happens a lot in London. So yesterday was the first time actually we didn't run it, because despite the fact that the government yet hasn't shut it down, we thought that it was not responsible to do so. But we ran it virtually, right? So we did a live streaming on Instagram. Yesterday was the first one. We got 80 people attending on Instagram, and it was a way to stay together again and to be fit at home, right? And there's a lot you can do without weights. And you know, we're gonna be doing so every Sunday, and we're probably gonna be doing it now even more often because people are home and are getting bored and are eating a lot. So you need to work out more. Yeah, so that's on a personal level. On a technological level, I agree. You know, Zoom and collaboration tools are going to be used more and more. Probably that habit will stay later, hopefully. And then on a professional perspective, yeah, we spoke with our startups. I believe everybody has now seen Sequoia's email to or note about the fact that capital is going to dry up and it's tough times are coming ahead. So it's important that our startups try to put together, well, without try, that they put together a kind of like contingency plan. What can they cut if things go bad, right? And then they have a contingency plan of the contingency plan if things go bad for a year, right? Instead of getting back better in the summertime. So yeah, we are basically asking this to our portfolio companies. Important that the CEOs have these make this intellectual exercise. And then the last bit professionally, I think, is if you know, some of our startups closed funding end of last year, and they were approached to get new money at the beginning of this year, and they're like, should I take funding or not? I don't know how to use it, which is a good problem to have, right? You know, and initially we told them, well, if you cannot put it to good use, or if you don't get the valuation you want, don't take it. Now we're telling them, I mean, take what you can, because there's no certainty what's going to happen in the second half of the year. Just make sure you put it to good use, extend your runway. So yeah, if there's capital you can take it. And then the last bit I'd like to say is I saw an email on the Young VC network coming out of one of the founders of Copin, that basically saying lots of startups are concerned about the raise and they would like to close funding. So he's calling out all active investors and he's going to try to do matchmaking. And yeah, so there is an opportunity in this.
One of the aspects that hasn't been touched upon yet, and that's certainly relevant for us in Austria, but that's true in many other countries as well. We have a fairly high share of non-dilutive public grant funding in our pre-seed stage. So typically, when we put in 300,000 equity, those companies would draw on between $1 million, $1.5 million initial grants. So I don't see a risk that this is going to be cut short term. I think quite the contrary. It's clear that all the countries will run huge public deficits this year. One risk that I do see is that, this is not a prolonged post-2008 situation, or it's not seen like this by the government, but just by one big hit, right? So they're willing to spend as much as necessary currently and in this year, and we go back to sort of austerity mode and maybe even more for the years to come. That's potentially something that could hurt us if we are not successful to really put sort of translational science and our area of activity on the forefront in such an atmosphere. So yeah, let's see how that will play out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we are in a very tough time, and our companies already in portfolio have to be very careful with the cash. In fact, we all knew the 2008 crisis. Probably it's not exactly the same, but the economy will take time to recover for sure, because shutting down all activities during several months is never good for no one. So keep the cash and be careful. And I think that we also probably as a seed investor will be more careful than ever to refinance our companies. Just as Paolo said, take the cash if there's some on the table, because it will be probably useful for the coming months and perhaps years. So not easy, but that's it.
Maybe one quick story that I can share is that I think we need to come to a close then soon. It did accelerate things. So we have been discussing with an antivirals opportunity at the medical university here for a couple of weeks. And we both were quite quick to sign the term sheet end of last week. Unfortunately, it's basically targeting rhinoviruses, so I'm not sure it's going to help a lot, but let's see, how they can benefit maybe from the current environment. So I guess there are going to be opportunities in this as well. So anybody else who wanted to come in on the COVID situation? If that's not the case, then Claire, you need to tell us now. I think we are coming up close to the end of our agreed time, and I guess you guys have to move on as well. Yeah, if there are, yeah, go ahead.
So normally on an actual panel at RESI, we do have an audience Q&A, but also given the limited time and also the fact that we don't have a live audience, I think what would make sense is maybe we could have some closing remarks, anything that you feel like wasn't covered, maybe we could just quickly go through that before we end the call. And then as I mentioned, we will be streaming the session for the 3 days of the conference. So if anyone wants to connect with you, any of you, after hearing the session and would like to ask any specific questions or just on the general seed funds landscape, especially given the difficult times that we are under right now, I'd be happy to help facilitate those kind of connections, because usually when the panels end, the audience, as you know, like to share business cards with panelists, have a little quick chat. And so we won't be able to do that this time. So we want to try to be able to facilitate those connections when possible.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. No, absolutely. So to all the people who are listening on this, please do feel free to reach out to us. And maybe I can just quickly start this wrap-up round that you suggested. Yeah, just feel free to reach out. My email is Markus, MARKUS, at ist-cube.com. You'll find it on the web. Should be easy and straightforward. Yeah, I think the one area that was touched upon quite a number of times was cash constraint and what are the funding times that we're looking ahead. Let me just, from my perspective, start on a positive note. I'm quite confident that we will continue on the path that we have been working. We have an investment model that actually gives quite clear numbers what we are supposed to invest over the next couple of years. We'll continue to do that, and therefore I don't see any immediate impact on ourselves. I think conserving cash and rethinking the timing of the next funding rounds and having contingency plans there is an obvious thing to do for the company. Yeah, as far as we are concerned, I think we will just steam ahead as we planned.
Okay, that sounds great. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add to that, but if anyone has anything else to say, otherwise I think we could close the session.
I think that this is an opportunity for, this is Paolo from Joyance. This is an opportunity for the startups in this field, right? Because in times of crisis, times like these, everybody wants health, everybody wants to look at longevity, and in our case, health and happiness. So we are in a very lucky area of interest, in my view, even more so now. So yeah, look at the bright side, hang in there, and we'll get to the end of this, and bright times are going to come back.
So I think that was a good ending note, a bright Italian one. Thanks very much, Paolo, for that. And thanks very much, Claire, for actually putting this together. I'm sure you have been through tough times now, reorganizing a physical conference into a digital one. Thanks for all your effort. Thanks for bringing us on the panel. Thanks to the other panel members. I think we had a good discussion. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.